Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Anko awaken a monster inside of Naruto-kun and fall in love with him part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. A 6-year-old Uzumaki Naruto lay on his back in the cold dank alleyway that his attackers left him in not 5 minutes ago. He was beaten and broken, so much so that his body felt numb. Good. It was better if he couldn't feel the pain right now. He could somewhat hear the faint noises that the still-going celebration was making in the distance, mocking him with its cheery attitude, completely ignorant of his suffering. After a random man walked right into the young blonde, said man decided, after noticing who it was he bumped into, that he was going to relieve some pent-up stress on the village pariah. At some time during the beating others began to join in. Before it ended there seemed to be at least 10 of them. One boy, one child, against 10 adults, an entire village, an entire world. Yet, the small smile on his face never faded, even as the tears rolled down his cheeks to meet the damp ground. It had rained the day before, he had remembered. He wondered if, hadn't the member of the zoo not shown up, would they have stopped like they did? Would they have kept going until he no longer drew breath? He was curious, was all. He always could feel what others felt. He could feel the pain and rage they experienced when they caught sight of him. Just like how he knew they weren't angry at him, but at the thing inside of him. That never stopped them from projecting their anger on his young body though. Did they ever notice that he never resisted? He didn't understand what exactly he housed in his gut, but he was sure that it was the ire of the village. He'd heard the stories of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the demon, that attacked the village a few years ago. He put 2 and 2 together and figured the red-hot and oh-so-angry feeling in his gut was the supposed destruction incarnate. When he calmed his breathing and focused he could feel the massive aura that was the Kyuubi. He would search for something else, anything else within that storm of rage. He understood the feeling he found completely. Loneliness. Naruto had been all alone since he was born. No parents, no friends, nothing. It was a nightmare, except he couldn't wake up. He was stuck. That never kept him down though, because with his innate ability to feel those around him also came the ability to understand them completely. And when you can understand someone completely, you can't help but love them. And Naruto did. He loved his village, his people, with his entire being. He could connect to others on such a level that if someone paid even a sliver of attention to him, they would realize that the boy was capable of feats no other human was able to perform. He, in the simplest way to put it, was doing the impossible, the unthinkable, the amazing. To connect and understand another's feelings and intentions to such a degree that you could practically understand what the other was thinking was as scary as it was incredible. And that was only the beginning of what Naruto could do with his natural talents. Compared to his other skill set, the empathy was just a small drop in a very large ocean. He had never used his other ability on another living being before, but he knew, the outcome would be terrifyingly effective. Sighing to himself, the little Uzumaki finally stood, already healed of the beating he had received. If his pain caused others joy, even if only slightly, then he would take it. He was the only person who understood the pain of each individual as much as they themselves did, so it just stood to be true that he would be the only one who could handle their anger. He could and would take it all, the pain, like it was his life's mission. He would do that for his precious village. Dusting off the dirt that now occupied his clothes, Naruto began to walk, where to even he did not know. He felt drawn to something the moment he first stood. Like something, no, someone was calling out for help, calling out for him. They were scared, terrified, and helpless against whatever it was causing their intense fear. It was so strong that it hurt his heart, his soul and whole self. He needed to get to them quickly. He decided to try out an idea he had a few days ago. With the use of his other ability, he thought that it would be possible to run faster than he usually was capable of. Much faster. Pulling in that beautifully bright and unbelievably powerful essence that was all around him, always roaming the world, or was it the world itself? He flooded his body with it to the spilling point. He was now brimming with the unnamed and unknown energy, and he began directing it to his legs. Just like he had thought, his speed doubled. Not enough. He wasn't fast enough, not yet. He forced even more of the energy into his legs, his speed tripling. More. He repeated the process again. His speed quadrupled. Not yet. His speed quintupled. He was so fast everything seemed to be in slow motion. He was no longer visible to the human eye, or any eye for that matter. He suddenly came to a complete halt, like he wasn't traveling fast enough to clear the whole village in seconds. He was directly in the path of someone he had never met, or felt, in his village before now. He was in a different uniform than the shinobi of his village, and his forehead protector was not of the leaf as well. With the foreign energy flowing through his body, Naruto could see perfectly in the dark. The man had white bandages wrapped around the top part of his head, his hitai slanted on his face, completely covering his right eye from the world with a black piece of string holding it all together. He had brown hair, if his brown facial hair was anything to go by. And he was tall, a lot taller than the blonde. Naruto immediately recognized the small form that was held in the man's left arm as the person he felt. He could still feel their fear even now. He wanted to change that, immediately. The man looked down on the small boy in front of him and snarled, "Out of my way, runt." The head ninja of Kumo barked. Naruto was silent for a moment, too angry to even move his body. He had felt the unknown man when he arrived and he now knew his intentions. He was taking what was not his to take. He was condemning an innocent and, what he now knew, gentlest girl he'd ever felt to a life of servitude and abuse. He knew the man thought of her as nothing more than a pawn, a means of reproducing powerful and, if her eyes were anything to go by, special shinobi. Naruto truly despised this man, he was the scum of this earth. Something inside Naruto clicked. He knew what he had to do. He could now feel and understand himself. He knew what he was now. The dark-skinned shinobi vaulted over the child in front of him, knowing that time was against him. He had no time to deal with someone who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He kept running, making decent distance, until he was stopped once more. Again, the blonde-haired boy suddenly flashed in front of him, almost too fast for him to react to. In the back of his mind, he was worried just how strange it was for someone so young to be so fast. He snarled, and went to grab a kunai from his pouch to dispense with the nuisance. That's when he felt it. Naruto's hand raised into the air, ignoring the man's attempt to bring out a weapon, and began to do the impossible. The world, which was the only way he could describe it, began to twist and turn, producing the same energy that was currently occupying his body. However, now it was different, more refined, sharper, and tangible. From the very air itself, bright golden, the same color as his eyes, particles began to appear, floating in the sky above him. With the flick of his wrist, the particles stirred, slowly rotating, grinding itself in a circular motion, enthusiastically obeying its master's whims. The grizzled man's eyes widened. He didn't exactly know what was happening, but he was able to understand that it wasn't all that good for his health. It was supposed to be dark out, being well past sundown, but with the golden matter that was flying around, the sky was ablaze in a molten gold fury. It briefly passed through the head ninja's mind that, for a moment, it had looked like the heavens themselves opened up to bring forth their wrath on him. It was the most terrifyingly beautiful thing the seasoned Jonin had ever seen. Naruto's hand shot open, spreading his fingers in the air. That's when the particles took form, mimicking his right arm, the spread fingers and all, just in a much larger proportion. It looked like it was the right hand of God more than a small child's anger. Naruto gave one more soul-piercing glare at the man, their eyes meeting for mere seconds. In those chaste moments, the head ninja had thought the boy could actually see his soul for what it was, tainted. He had never felt sheer terror like this before. So why was it so serene? For a moment, the Kumo nin wondered why he wasn't moving, why he wasn't cutting this strange child's throat and vanishing into the night. And then he knew, with a strange, detached realization that he couldn't. Whatever the thing in the sky was, it demanded all his attention. Not even the fear of being caught by the Konoha shinobi could spur him. The Uzumaki could feel the familiar presence of who he guessed was the girl's father. Familiar as in he had felt the man before, he had by now memorized all of Konoha's citizens. He nodded at the man, and the older Hyuga wasted no time to leap forward and scoop his daughter in his arms. Once he leapt back out of the way, Naruto had no reason to wait anymore. In the back of his head he knew he was being watched, he could recognize Hokage Jiji's presence anywhere, and he was always with members of the zoo, so they too he was very familiar with. Especially the lazy-feeling one, He was the blonde's favorite. That didn't matter now though. All that mattered at this very moment was to rid the world of this disgusting man. Like an enraged god bringing down his divine judgment, Naruto clenched his hand in a fist while slamming it down into the ground at his feet, cracking a large portion of it. He unleashed all his anger with a monstrous shout, something that sounded more animal than human. Ah! In a blink of an eye, the gold hand-like structure fell to the earth right above the would-be kidnapper from Kumo with earth-shattering might. All the shinobi present actually had a hard time withstanding the blast, using a large amount of chakra just to stay in place and upright. The power behind the attack had to be equivalent to 20 or 30 explosive tags going off at once. It was a terrifying sight. When the incredible golden light finally faded away, all that was left was a deep scar in the earth. A very deep scar. Naruto stood from his prone form, letting his fist unclench as he did so. No one said a word, no one moved a muscle, and everyone tried to hold their breath. Silence reigned supreme in the now very large street as everyone just stared at the boy in disbelief. Not only did the demon child completely and utterly overpower and decimate the head ninja of Kumogakure no Sato, but he did it with ease, without the help of his charge, and for the sake of another Konoha citizen. It was incredible, it was amazing, and it was unbelievable. Everyone tensed as the village pariah moved forward, towards the Hyuga clan head and heiress. When he was standing right next to the man, Naruto gave him a gentle and warm smile, already able to feel the man's gratitude and unafraid feelings. That made Naruto happy, someone appreciated him. Is she okay, mister? Naruto asked softly, his gentle smile never leaving his face. Hyuga Hiyashi gave a smile himself, something not many were privileged to see, ever, and nodded. It would seem so. I have you to thank for that, Naruto-san, the Hyuga man replied, still holding his firstborn. I am forever in your debt. Naruto shook his head. I'm just glad she's okay. Hiyashi nodded. As am I. Sarutobi Hiruzen landed next to Naruto and gave the boy a questioning look. We need to talk, Naruto-kun, were the only words that left the aged Hokage's mouth before he Shunshin's body flickered away, taking the blonde with him. As Naruto sat in the chair across the Hokage in the man's office, he felt no fear. He already knew what the man was going to ask. And he was going to answer with a smile, because he knew he had done the right thing. He had saved an innocent, and was proud of it. That made him a hero. He had taken another's life, and enjoyed it. That made him a monster. Whatever others saw him as didn't matter now though. He had found a way to feel. He felt alive. He felt free. He was finally awake. So the zoo was nothing like what Naruto thought it would be. Most of the people were of the silent type, which was something he was okay with, having people ignore him for most of his life, which, in hindsight, was only 6 years, so he didn't really have all that much experience. After the little chat he and the Hokage had after he terminated the Kumo shinobi, the old Sarutobi had decided that it would be best if Naruto put his abilities to good use. That came in the form of joining the zoo, or what he now knew to be the Anbu Black Ops. They were the Ansatsu Senjutsu Tokushu Butai, the Special Assassination and Tactical Squad. That night was the best thing that ever happened to the blonde. Until the last word spoken by his now senpai. Flashback. Naruto could feel what the Hokage was feeling, anxiety. He had seen a boy of only 6 years annihilate with extreme prejudice the head ninja of Kumo. The man was the ambassador of peace for the cloud, and he was a strong jonin in his own right. The fact that Naruto had done away with him with what looked like ease made him very uneasy. Gigi, I can feel what you're thinking, just ask. I'll tell you the truth, honest. Naruto finally broke the awkward silence in the Hokage's office. The poor man was pacing the very moment they appeared in the small room. How can you feel what I'm thinking? Hiruzen asked, baffled that the boy was claiming to have the ability to read minds. Were his thoughts not safe now? When the Uzumaki laughed, the Lord Third felt like he was the child. I can't exactly hear your thoughts, Gigi, that's impossible. Naruto admitted. It's kind of hard to explain. The blonde trailed off, rubbing his chin with his right hand. It's like I'm connected to, well, everything. That's the only way I can describe it. At his grandfather figure's confused expression, Naruto explained a little better. When people are upset, I can tell. Naruto elaborated. And not just tell, but tell why. He continued, trying his best to describe what he could do. And how long have you been able to do such a thing? And why did you say everything instead of just people? The Sarutobi asked, wanting more. For how long? It's been since I could remember, he said, still rubbing his chin. For why I said what I did, that's because it's not just with people. Animals and plants, really anything, as long as it's living. I guess I could say I'm connected with life. Here, Sarutobi noticed Naruto's eyes widen. What is it, Naruto-kun? His voice was riddled with fear. Naruto gave him a sheepish look. Ah, it's nothing, Gigi, I've just never thought about it that way is all. Maybe that's the best way to describe it. His closed hand met his open palm. Yeah, I'm connected with life. The Lord Third sighed. The boy was going to give him a heart attack. So how can you tell what others are feeling? I'm not really sure, Naruto admitted, but I can do it. He finished with a wide smile. The Hokage nodded, trying to process what he was hearing. And the golden matter you used on the Kumo Nin. That was what Hiruzen wanted to know the most about. If he had to guess, that was an A-rank technique. Most grown adults didn't have the ability to even use such high-rank techniques, never mind create new ones. The last time an A-rank technique was developed, it made its creator a legend. The copy Nin was a man known far and wide. Yet, here he was, only 6 and already so far ahead of all those before him. It was unnerving to think that such raw talent and power was in the hands of such a young child. Oh, that, Naruto's smile grew, if that was even possible. I made it up. Hiruzen couldn't help but smile at Naruto's enthusiasm. What exactly was it? He needed to be the Hokage right now, not the boy's surrogate grandfather. Naruto chuckled awkwardly. Don't really know that either. Sarutobi sighed. Did the boy know anything about his own abilities? The way he could use them said he did, but that, surprisingly, was not the truth. Can you tell me anything about it? Anything at all? He asked, needing, to know what the boy knew. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I can describe how I do it. When Hiruzen nodded, the boy continued. There's this kind of feeling in the air, like a constant energy that's always around me. I don't know why others can't feel it and I can, but I do know that it's there. He can't mean natural energy. The Hokage thought to himself. There's no way someone could be born able to feel it, right? When his Gigi didn't reply, he continued. When I need it, I can pull the energy into myself. When I do, a lot of stuff happens. He held up one finger. My body becomes tougher. 2 fingers, I get a whole lot stronger. Like yesterday, I lifted an entire tree out of the ground. 3 fingers, I get faster. I think I can outrun anyone in this whole village. Sarutobi highly doubted that. There were a lot of fast ninja in Konoha, but he didn't voice his thoughts. 4 fingers. I can feel others more, and farther away, too. Hiruzen's eyebrows climbed up into his hairline. This kept sounding more and more like natural energy by the minute. 5 fingers. And I can control and shape the energy around me. That's the gold dust stuff you saw forming the arm. Now that did not sound like something any sage the Hokage ever heard of being able to do. Naruto-kun, I believe you were born with the amazing ability to use natural energy, something only a sage is capable of doing. Hiruzen informed with a smile on his face. There is only one other person in this world that can use the sage arts, and that's my pupil, Jiraiya. Naruto shot up out of his seat. You mean I can use the same power as one of your students? He half asked, half yelled, excitement evident in his voice. Hiruzen nodded. It would seem so. But whereas he had to be taught the sage arts, you were born able to use them. Another smile ghosted the elderly man's lips. It's truly remarkable. Naruto nodded, a 1,000-watt smile plastered to his face. So what now, Gigi? He asked, eager to learn more. Hiruzen thought on it for a moment. What was he going to do with the boy? He definitely needed to contact Jiraiya and have him come home. He needed to know of this mind-blowing discovery. He also wanted to train the boy. He knew he would become someone more powerful than even his father. Having a hand in teaching such a person would be a gift in and of itself. Throwing him into the academy would be a shame. His talents would be wasted in that environment. What could he do? An idea began to form. With a snap of his fingers, a man dressed in black clothing, gray armor, and a white face mask, a member of the zoo, appeared from within the shadows. It wasn't a surprise to Naruto. having felt the man's presence the moment he arrived shortly after them. He knew the man as the lazy one, his favorite zoo member. The shock of gravity-defying silver hair just confirmed this. Inu, do you think you have room in your cell for one more? It was worded as a question, but it wasn't intended as one. When the god of shinobi spoke, you listened, no matter what you were asked of. Discreetly, of course, no one besides you will know his true identity, and only your team will know that he's even in Anbu. He added, never taking his eyes off of the Uzumaki. Naruto could feel the man's reluctance, and was intrigued that it didn't come in his dislike of either his age nor his burden, but something else, something personal. Why did the lazy one care for him? After the split-second hesitation, the dog-styled masked nin saluted his Hokage, giving the aged warrior an affirmative, yes, sir, before turning his gaze to the blonde. It won't be easy, Inu began in a hard and firm voice. He then gave off the feeling of warmth and protectiveness, Kahai. Naruto gave a warm smile and nodded as fast as he could. I'll do my best, Inu-senpai. And with that said, Naruto could already feel the great things he was going to do with Inu. It will be tough, Naruto-kun, but I believe you can do it. I think you will be able to protect Konoha better than anyone else. The Hokage said warmly, his smile showing his pride for his successor's child. This was it. Welcome to the Anbu Black Ops. He would finally be able to do what he wanted the most, protect Konoha. Nezumi Kahai. Wait. What? End flashback. Apparently, Anbu operatives were given their codename by their captain, and Inu just happened to be Nezumi's captain. Well, he was going to be Nezumi's captain once he received all of the required training. Couldn't have someone out in the field that didn't know what they were doing. When he asked why he was dubbed Nezumi, Kakashi replied with, because you're tiny. A tick mark appeared on the blonde's forehead, like a mouse, he added, and was met with silence, small. Nezumi sighed. That was okay with Nezumi, he was only 6, he had time. All he had to do now was survive Inu's hell school, whatever that meant. It shouldn't be too hard. He was happy, and nothing could change that. Nezumi was miserable. If there was such a place as hell, Nezumi thought that it sounded like a nice place to vacation to. Hell school was painful and exhausting, physically, emotionally and spiritually. What the hell was wrong with his captain? Was he a sadist? That would actually explain a lot. Nezumi was currently sprawled out on his rock-hard bed, having moved into the Anbu headquarters the day after he talked to the Hokage and Inu-senpai about joining the zoo, which just happened to coincide with his 7th birthday. It was required of all agents to live within the Black Ops building. At first, Nezumi wasn't all that thrilled about the idea, but now, after 6 months of the place, he didn't even notice anymore. He chalked it up as just another thing he had to do for his village. Today had been a particularly painful day. His ability to manipulate natural energy was incredibly advanced, and the only person that could help him further his prowess with that was still not available. The Toad Sage was the kind of person who was very hard to find if he didn't want to be found. Apparently he didn't want to be found at the moment. Month 1 and 2. His training consisted of the usual required Anbu material, which included a whole lot of studying. Anbu had to have a certain level of knowledge in both foreign and domestic affairs. Nezumi found that he wasn't the biggest fan of books. But he did as he was told nonetheless, accomplishing everything Inu threw his way. The second month he had been personally trained by the Hokage in the ways of running a village. There was a lot of politics and other boring stuff involved, but Nezumi soaked it all up. He planned on becoming the greatest Hokage, the likes of which Konoha has never seen. He really wanted to feel free and awake again. The only way he could do that was if he was protecting his village, his people. Month 3. Another huge section of his training consisted of learning other shinobi skills. Inu had told him that he needed to be more versatile. A one-trick pony, whatever the hell that meant, was something he didn't want to be. Inu, who was now more of his sensei than anything, first taught him how to climb trees. Without his hands, that was something he actually enjoyed doing. And it only took 10 minutes. Inu-senpai, after a long and detailed lesson on chakra and chakra control, explained to him that it seemed that he had abnormally amazing chakra control. Such a level of precision was something apparently only Tsunade, who happened to be another Sanin he shared something with, could accomplish. Senju Tsunade was the medical nin, and he was up to par with her when it came to control. He put that in the back of his head for later. Versatility, versatility, versatility. After the tree walking exercise, Inu Senpai taught him to do the same thing, but on water. That, too, was incredibly fun. It also only took 10 minutes. Deciding that he needed to throw more difficult things at the boy, he began teaching him the Shunshin body flicker, which took a little longer for the boy to learn. This time it took 15 minutes. This was starting to intrigue Inu. The boy had said that he could understand everything so long as it was alive. That made Inu start to question, were jutsu alive? Because if so, Nezumi was capable of understanding any and all techniques, as long as they were performed within his sensory area. That was impossible though. The only technique he heard of that could understand jutsu like that was implanted in his left eye, the Sharingan. If it was true, just what were the boy's limits? Did he have any? The thought began to make more and more sense. Nezumi was incredibly mature, far from anything and now 7-year-old should be. He was able to speak like an adult, see things from an adult's point of view, and understand the adult world. So, how did he do it? Inu had never been one to believe that age brought wisdom. He had known a lot of unwise, elderly people. He personally thought that experience brought wisdom, which was not the same thing. You could live your entire life ignorant if you were sheltered or reclusive. Obviously though, a 7-year-old, no matter how hard their life may be, did not have the required experience to be so wise in the ways of the world. Something else allowed him to be so mature. That something had to be his empathy ability. If he could truly understand others, then he had to have started understanding their feelings. Learning about love, hate, jealousy, greed, lust, joy, sorrow and everything in between must have been the strangest thing for someone so young. That was the only explanation Inu could come up with on how a mere child could comprehend the emotions that he was able to feel. It was impossible, but that just made it even more special. The rest of the month he had used to come up with a name for the tangible natural energy he used. Month 4. Nezumi was then taught Shuriken Jutsu. That took up a lot of his time. It was hard for him to throw the kunai at first because his hands were so small. After Inu taught him a trick that he used to do when he was young, apparently he was a young prodigy as well, that involved his chakra he caught on fast enough. Month 5. The next thing Nezumi had to learn was stealth. He was a little nervous about it at first, but after a couple of weeks he got the hang of it. Then it was Kenjutsu training. After the first day Inu thought he had finally found something the kid wasn't good at. He realized how wrong he was a week later. The cut on his back still stung from that. Month 6. As of late, Nezumi learned a lot of ninjutsu, finding it to be his favorite. With his perfect chakra control, learning genjutsu was too easy, and his taijutsu was still developing. With the natural energy flowing in his body, he didn't even need to actually land his strikes on his target. Ninjutsu, however, interested Nezumi the most. With his sage dust techniques, which he now called the gold natural energy he could manipulate, he was already ahead of most jonin when it came to power. But he couldn't solely rely on it, one-trick pony and everything. So the Hokage and Inu began to teach him elemental ninjutsu. The blonde's affinities were wind and fire, which also was special. He didn't have a Kekkei Genkei bloodline limit, not really, so the fact that he already had 2 affinities that complemented each other, was amazing. That's why the Uzumaki was so exhausted at the moment. Inu Senpai knew a lot of ninjutsu, as did the Lord Third, and they was making sure to drill as many into Nezumi as possible. His body was sore and limp, and he loved every moment of it. It reminded him that he was gaining the strength to do what was needed to be done. Things were going to change when he got out of these walls. Konoha's enemies would think twice before striking. Her people would know peace. Nezumi would be a hero. Even better, Nezumi would be a monster. It had been a whole year since he joined the zoo, and Nezumi had finally been cleared, field ready. He was nearing 8 now, and he was a certified member of the Anbu. He was nervous now though. Today was the day he met the rest of Captain Ine's team. He understood Inu's words when he said it would take the team a while to warm up to him. He was the youngest Anbu agent the elemental nations had ever seen. The others just needed to be positive that they could rely on him to watch their backs. They could. Inu had been extremely happy that he and the blonde were the same, patriots to the core, but still cared about the lives of their fellow citizen above all else. When Kakashi told him that those who abandoned the mission were considered trash, but those who abandoned their friends were worse than trash, Nezumi loved the saying so much that he asked if he could live by it as well. Kakashi, of course, said yes, he didn't even have to ask. The rate at which the blonde was able to learn and process, well, anything, was amazing. Inu didn't know of anything the boy couldn't do. He thought Nezumi was strong at first, but after Jiraiya had finally shown up, Inu prayed he never defected. Having to fight that would be bad for anyone's health. They'd die, plain and simple. He wasn't invincible though, and Inu was happy that the blonde realized that. Anyone could fall when arrogant or outnumbered. Nezumi took a deep breath. Here we go, he whispered, pushing through the double doors of Team Ro's designated lounging area. He was immediately met with stares. There was a small boy in a standard Anbu uniform and they didn't like where this was going. The Uzumaki agent took in his surroundings for a moment. The room was of medium size and Spartan. All there were gray walls and 3 very large black couches. The couches were set up so that they were connected, and a long glass table was centered in the middle of them. Ah, Nezumi Kahai, you made it. Inu called out over the palpable silence. Come here, I'll introduce you to everyone. Nezumi gulped, but obeyed nonetheless. Yes, sir. When the blonde made it to his captain, Inu put a hand on his shoulder. Everyone, I'd like you all to meet Nezumi. He's going to be assigned to Team RO for a while. No one said anything, but they didn't have to. Nezumi could feel what they thought of him. Great, we're stuck with some brat. What is the Hokage thinking? Hey, isn't that? No, it couldn't be. That last one almost made Nezumi flinch, but he stayed composed. I hope we can work well together. The blonde bowed. Inu cleared his throat. Right, well, let's report to Hokage-sama. I think it's about time for the newbie to take on his first mission. Nezumi gulped. 2 months. It had been 2 months since he joined Team RO and they still treated him like trash. He was officially the team's censor and not a frontliner, which is what he wanted to be, and the missions they carried out had little use for his abilities. He did spot an enemy ambush 2 weeks ago, but apparently that wasn't something that warranted much respect. He had been training for so long and he still couldn't wake up. It was somewhat annoying. Nezumi was currently sprinting through the forests that occupied the border of Hai no Kuni and Tsuchi no Kuni with Tora and Usagi, 2 of the people who disliked him the most. Inu Taicho said that if he worked with them more that they would have to warm up to him sooner or later. Nezumi highly doubted that but followed orders all the same. The 3 of them were doing a simple border patrol, making sure everyone stayed in their own countries. Simple enough, right? Nothing was ever simple. Nezumi signaled to the 2, stopping their fast-paced travel. What is it, kid? Tora asked, annoyed that the blonde was holding them up. 2 people are headed right for us. He signed in Anbu code. They aren't friendly either. He took another second to analyze the incoming shinobi, trying to understand what it was he was feeling. His eyes widened. Shit, he whispered, causing his comrades to take defensive stances. What they heard in his voice made them wary. What was going on? They must have felt me as well, the blonde thought to himself. If Tora and Usagi die because of me. Get out of here you 2, Nezumi whispered. His tone was serious. The only female of the group, Usagi, spoke up. Look kid, no matter how special you think you are, you can't just order your senpais around. She was giving off an annoyed emotion, Nezumi could tell. You're still just a brat. The blonde sighed. Were these people ever going to show him respect? So far Inu was the only person to welcome him into the fold. Usagi senpai, there are 2 Jinchuriki on their way from the direction of Tsuchi no Kuni. He informed them. They have probably felt my Biju's presence and decided to investigate. He could feel their fear. Don't worry. They're here for me, not you. He tried to calm them. Go. If I don't return, then Konoha will know where they stand with Iwa. He felt their disbelieving minds. You're going to sacrifice yourself for us? Tora asked, astounded. It was no secret that both he and Usagi hated Nezumi, so why the hell was he doing this? Why? The 2 ANBU's hearts almost broke when he took his mask off and smiled at them, of all things. Because we're comrades. You'd do the same for me if it was the other way around. Nezumi sometimes wished he couldn't feel people's hearts. No we wouldn't. Nezumi steeled himself. Anbu didn't cry. Now go, he repeated, this is my fight. And with that, He turned around and took off in the direction of the fast-approaching Awaken. It was a warm and sunny day, the complete opposite of what it should have been. He was sacrificing himself for people who didn't even see him as a person. He just couldn't bring himself to care though. This was it. Time to wake up. It had taken hours to regroup with Inu Taicho and the rest of the squad, but when Usagi and Tora explained what had transpired earlier in their border patrol, they regretted it. You're worse than trash now. Inu's cold voice hit Tora and Usagi like an enraged Tsunade. How could you just leave him to die like that? The worst part about it was that he wasn't even yelling at them. He was speaking in a soft and very scary voice. But Usagi tried to defend herself but couldn't think of anything to say. They had abandoned someone who truly cared for them. They knew of his abilities to feel almost what others thought. He must have known what their response was to his attempt to establish a bond. The two ANBU's hearts almost broke when he took his mask off and smiled at them of all things. Because we're comrades, you'd do the same for me if it was the other way around. Nezumi sometimes wished he couldn't feel people's hearts. No, he wouldn't. They didn't get the chance to speak again. Inu was gone, out to look for his wayward Kahai. Minutes after Usagi and Tora left, Nezumi, no, he was Naruto now, he was awake, was face to face with two S-class Jinchuriki. They had taken countless lives, Konoha Nin included, and had years to tame the beasts within. Naruto was 8, and the only time he had interacted with his charge they didn't even speak. Unfortunately for them, that was enough. Flashback. When the old pervert finally made it to Konoha, Naruto was put to work right away, and not just in senjutsu. Jiraiya sensei had been adamant that Naruto try and establish a link between him and the Kyuubi. Naruto didn't mind so much as he just didn't know how. Just relax, the Toad Sage told him, calm yourself and visualize what you want. Naruto sighed. What exactly was it that he wanted? Jiraiya had said that he was Konoha's Jinchuriki, and even though he didn't like it personally, his fellow Sennin told him that he needed to learn how to harness the Biju's power. Of course Naruto wanted to protect Konoha, but he felt guilty just taking what was not his. Didn't he kill a Kumo Nin for that? So what did he want? Deciding to just wing it and come up with an answer later, Naruto dived into his own mind. It was a wet, dark, and broken place. So nothing unusual. A long corridor, what looked like an underground sewer of sorts, stretched out from both behind and in front of him. Water dripped from the ceiling and the walls were cracked. Did he mention that he was knee-high in something he hoped was water, because he was? He chose to walk forward, might as well, and he began to regret his choice. It felt like hours had passed since he arrived and everything seemed to be the same, never changing, dingy hallways. That's when he came upon the large room that doubled as a cell on the far side, a very, very large cell. The metal bars, adorning a large tag the read, seal, reached into the darkness that was above them, lost in the expanse that was his mind. For a long drawn-out moment, everything was still. He began to think nothing was beyond those figurative bars, until a single, red-slitted eye peered through the darkness, capturing the small boy in its gaze. Before, when Naruto tried to feel the mass in his gut, he only ever felt hatred or malice, and at times, loneliness. Now, standing so close to the famed monster, he seemed almost calm. Naruto smiled. Was his soothing natural energy relaxing the all-powerful Biju? Whatever the case may be, Naruto was certain that the Kyuubi could feel him as well, like he too had the ability to read emotions. Naruto never felt so close to another in all his life. They were the same, in more ways than one. They were both scorned by the world. They were both the definition of strong. They were both forced upon each other. They were both too different than what people were comfortable with. And by far the most important and startling similarity was that they were both monsters. Standing proud and tall, not against the misunderstood Biju, but beside him, was thrilling. There was no need for words. Everything was being said through their eyes. I'm sorry for what's happened to you. I know. I'm going to save you. I know. I'll need your help. The visage that was the Kyuubi morphed into the terrifyingly wicked grin that stalked the nightmares of so many. I know. End flashback. Naruto wasn't sure why Team RO felt so awestruck when he returned to the village the next morning. He's in tattered and scorched rags, a sure sign of battle. Even Usagi and Tora felt like they were relieved and happy. His face mask is nowhere to be seen and he's covered head to toe in soot. That was strange, but Naruto was never one to look a gift horse in the mouth. What happened to you out there? Still he was disappointed in himself. One got away. Kakashi stored his observations away for after what was to come. Before he could think more on that line of thought, Tora and Usagi approached Naruto. He wasn't awake anymore, he was Nezumi now. The two approached Nezumi with a small bit of trepidation in their step. No, he didn't want them to fear him. That's when he realized it. We apologize for being worse than trash, Nezumi Kahai. They both shouted simultaneously, their heads lowered in a deep bow. They weren't afraid of him, they were upset with themselves for abandoning a teammate. They accepted him. Nezumi's heart jumped. Was it finally that time? Was he now noticed as important? If you have it in you to forgive us, we promise to treat you with the respect you deserve. Usagi begged. I would be proud to work alongside such an amazing comrade. Tora added. That was it, the word he was waiting, craving to hear. It was that time after all. He was finally a part of Konoha, small as it may be. He was being recognized as a comrade and not someone not even worth the oxygen he consumed. Nezumi chuckled. You guys look silly bowing your heads to an 8-year-old. Usagi and Tora raised their heads. Of course I'd like to work with you. Here he spread his arm out, motioning to the rest of the members, all of you, if that's okay. The smile on his soot-covered face was all the gathered members of Team RO needed to break into cheers of approval. The kid was all right in their book. Naruto could feel it, all of the accepting hearts and minds of his team. It was almost too much to handle. Almost. Nezumi, you need to be debriefed. Inu Taicho spoke above the yelling. The Hokage needs to know what happened during the time you were Mia. The cheers died down, but the emotions still filled the air, and that was enough. Nodding to his captain, Nezumi headed for the exit, intent on following the silver-haired man. Before he could make it out of the door though, Usagi called out his name, causing him to stop and turn to the woman. Yes, Usagi-senpai, he asked, a gentle smile stuck to his face. Damn, he really needed to work on his poker face. I forgot to say this before but, she paused, looking back at Tora who nodded at her. Thank you, and welcome to the Anbu. She crooked her mask to the side slightly so that only he could see what lay underneath. Dark onyx eyes that complemented her long dark hair, a small nose, luscious lips, and an altogether pretty face, and planted a small kiss on his cheek. The room lit up in O's and Nezumi's face went a deep scarlet. He was also pretty sure he had an incredibly stupid grin plastered to his face too, but he didn't care. That was awesome. He did it. He was now officially a member of the zoo. Having heard the happenings that his newest operative explained, in great detail, about the death match he had with two people he was unfortunately familiar with, had the Lord Third Hokage nervous. Seeing the subsequent head of Yoden no Roshi laid out on his desk, unsealed from the scroll said operative put it in after he managed to defeat and kill the powerful man scared him further. What couldn't this boy accomplish? Gigi, about the Yonbi, the soot-covered blonde even looked nervous here, we need to talk. His eyes dragged over to where he could feel the ever-present Anbu watching their leader closely. In private, his voice was riddled with concern. Great, what now? The shores that made up the coast of Mizu no Kuni were heavy with fog. The sun was nowhere in sight, and the air was thick with moisture. It felt like it could rain any minute now. The small fishing village the four-man cell arrived at was said to belong to the resistance. The war between them and the Lord Fourth Mizukage was heavily reliant on territorial dominance. Mizu no Kuni was made up of several islands, all centering the country's hidden village, Kurigakure no Sato, which was currently in the hands of the tyrant known as Yagura. The man was leading a crusade to purge the bloodline users from Mizu. It was said that he thought them to be too dangerous to let live, so decided to kill his own people out of fear. Hundreds of thousands had already been slaughtered, and many more still lived in fear of his genocide. The other nations all decided to stay out of Mizu's business, letting them handle their own domestic affairs. The bloody and crippling civil war finally reached the Land of Fire's citizens, in a way. A small scientific expedition into the waters that bordered Hai no Kuni and Mizu no Kuni turned into a massacre. The group of 6 civilian scientists, not a shinobi in sight, was captured by the Mizukage's forces and executed on the false charges of espionage. Konoha received their heads a week later, courtesy of the Mizukage himself. Yugura was a fool, because now Konoha had him in her sights. She cried for his blood, and his blood she shall be given. The Mizukage was playing a dangerous game by poking the sleeping dragon that was the god of shinobi's wrath. That's why the Lord Third ordered a small contingent of Rohan to join the resistance and strike at Yugura directly. Taking a deep breath of the cold, salt air-riddled afternoon air of the shoreline, Nezumi glanced at the captain of their newest assignment, Neko Senpai. The woman had long beautiful purple hair, and that was all that Nezumi knew about the cat-masked operative. She was an Anbu through and through. She never took her mask off, at least since he joined the Corps 2.5 years ago. Nezumi knew better though. She was a warm person and thought the same as he and Inu Taicho. The team was just as important as the mission. That made it easier for him to suddenly be under her command. To his left was the official, youngest Anbu agent in Konoha, Karasu, his best friend. The crow-masked operative joined the fold half a year after the little incident that caused Team RO to finally accept him. It came to no surprise to Nezumi that Karasu entered the Black Ops. The things the blonde felt coming from the young Uchiha amazed even him. He was strong, obviously, but his mind and heart made Nezumi instantly want to befriend him the moment he walked into Rohan's changing room. Being the closest to him in age was a factor too. After a few missions together, the two became quick friends and were usually paired together. Team RO had been a little more accepting when the 10-year-old joined. After working with an 8-year-old juggernaut made sure they'd never judge someone by their age again. Crouching next to Karasu was the newest member of Rohan, Saru. It was strange, first Karasu, and now Saru called him Nezumi Senpai. He was too embarrassed to refer to them as Kahai though, he was only 10 now. They were both at the very least 2 years older than him. Saru had shown a lot of respect to Nezumi right away, and that confused him greatly. The monkey-masked man had explained that he was somewhat of a celebrity among the younger operatives at HQ, even if it was just a rumor. A child with the strength of an entire army was what they described him as, and some even said that he was invincible. Nezumi was less than pleased about the rumors. His status as an operative was top secret. He was the Hokage's personal shadow, a silent defender. He didn't mind fame, but his Hokage had wanted him to be a whisper, not a poster boy for the village. They had Itachi for that. Of course, Saru was in his mid-20s, but that was apparently young enough to look up to the legend that was slowly coming forth. His thoughts were interrupted. Nezumi, find the resistance, we need to meet up with them and explain Hokage-sama's orders. Neko spoke, giving her first order as a captain. Nezumi nodded, already doing what he was told. The village was small and not a lot of people resided in it. That made it incredibly easy to lock onto the strong chakra signatures that he was sure belonged to the resistance. Done. They're not far from here, just northeast of this position, 10 minutes I'd say. Nezumi replied, waiting for the next orders to be given. Lead the way, she said, confident in his abilities. Having worked with the young blonde for the better part of 2 years made her a firm believer that he was in a league far out of her reach. She was just glad that he was letting her run the show. Someone else that knew that they were the greater would have given her trouble during the entire assignment. That's why she respected Nezumi. He was far from arrogant and loved to cooperate with his team, always listening to orders and offering help whenever it was needed. Yes, Captain. And with that, he took off in the direction of the higher-than-average chakra signatures, leading the cell for the short duration. He took in the sights of the village as he raced across it. There were a lot of shops, and the ground of the shopping district was made of cobblestone, different. The people here looked so sad, and the young Anbu operative could feel their suffering. Good. Now he had more of a reason to fulfill his Hokage's orders. Yugura had to die. Like he said, it only took 10 minutes before they reached a seemingly random hut at the edge of a dock. Nezumi knew better. He could feel the shinobi below them. No one could escape his sensing capabilities. He was the greatest sensor in the village after all, able to feel the emotions and intentions of anyone in his range, which was incredibly large. Nodding to Neko, the mouse-masked boy fell back, allowing the woman to take the lead again. Stretching her arm out to rasp against the wooden door, she was cut off by a burly man with long black hair. State your business, Konoha Nin. I've done nothing wrong, and you have no jurisdiction in this part of the world. His voice was gruff, matching his appearance perfectly. The scar that ran across the bridge of his nose reminded Nezumi of a chunin he knew to work at the academy. He didn't know the man's name, but he knew that if he went to the academy, he would want that man to be his instructor. He had a good heart. Neko chose her words carefully. We've come on the behalf of the Lord Hokage. We have jurisdiction anywhere we so please. She gave the man a respectful nod of her head. Konoha wishes to help wash away the red from the waters. We're here to clean house. There it was. The code the resistance used to identify friendlies. That little piece of information was invaluable to them. Without it, the resistance wouldn't have let them anywhere near their plans. What they say about Jiraiya must be true, the man was a master spy. Wait here for a moment, was the man's reply, disappearing from the door to enter the small shack. 5 minutes later, the man returned and ushered them into the hut, which would have looked strange to onlookers. The hut looked like it could only fit 2 of them in at the same time. The hut itself was just a ploy, what lay underneath it was the true hideout. The underground tunnel was very large, an experienced Doden user must have had a hand in creating it. The tunnel stretched out for a small distance, which led out in an even larger room. There were people scurrying about like worker bees. Nezumi chuckled, it was like a hive. So that must mean the absolutely beautiful woman with long, auburn hair sitting at the very large table in the center giving him a predatory glare like he was her prey was the queen. This should be fun, he thought to himself before joining Neko and the rest of the team in making their way to the obvious leader. The smirk on her face kind of excited Nezumi. So, Konoha finally decides to send assistance and all we get are 3 Anbu. She shook her head in mock hurt. I'm disappointed. 4, Neko spoke, you've been given 4 Anbu to your cause. Ah, but you're wrong, sweetheart, she retorted. The children only count as half an Anbu. Her smile was still as sweet as it had first been. So I've been given 3, such a shame too, I really could have used the help. Saru decided to speak on behalf of Karasu and Nezumi. You're going to eat those words later on, beautiful. Nezumi sighed. Saru was always hitting on women. Even now, in a foreign country and in the presence of what the blonde could feel to be a powerful kunoichi. The woman's predatory smirk intensified. Yup, Nezumi definitely liked this one. Oh, now I just can't wait to see what the youth of Konoha is capable of. She almost sounded genuine, but she couldn't escape Nezumi's abilities. No matter how good of a liar she was. Our Hokage has given us orders to shadow the resistance and assist in any and every way possible. Our goal is to get Yagura alone with Nezumi here. She informed the woman, gesturing to the smallest member of the cell. A delicate eyebrow rose on the beautiful woman's face. And why would your Hokage wish to have a child confront a cage-level Jinchuriki? Nezumi was glad that he had his mask on, because if he didn't, everyone would have seen the absolutely terrifying smile on his face. The Lord Hokage wishes to end the life of the Yondaime Mizukage. The easiest way for that to happen is if we wake our sleeping comrade. The blonde really loved how his team understood him so. He would have started laughing if he hadn't trained so hard to be capable of keeping his emotions in check. The woman was now really confused. He guessed that she'd never met a monster before. Black Harbor, Terumi May began, as a loyalist-controlled prison. It houses a good portion of our people. Here, an angry expression flashed across the woman's face. The ones the bastard keeps alive. It had only been a few hours since the Team RO contingent met with the resistance, and they were already being put to work. Karasu was indifferent. Saru was annoyed. Neko was ready to serve. And Nezumi was excited. If they could help win the war for the resistance, Kiri, with whoever became the Mizukage, Nezumi thought it would most likely be Mei, would be indebted to Konoha. He was going to have a hand in creating a peaceful alliance for his home and Kiri. He would save so many lives. And take so many more. It was a win-win situation. You want my team to, what, pull off a prison break? Neko asked. She didn't see how this would help them any. Yes, that is exactly what I want of you and your little team. Nezumi could feel that Neko didn't like Mei too much. My top general went in to find information on the whereabouts of Yagura's top weapons manufacturing buildings. The green-eyed woman brushed a stray hair back into one of the 4 bangs that framed her face. I was planning on sending 3 of my teams in, but if what you say about the 2 kiddies is true, then I haven't the need to, now do I? Nezumi could understand why she wasn't Mei's biggest fan. She kind of came off as arrogant, but maybe that was just because she didn't know them all that well. Nezumi wanted to chuckle again. He could play that game if that's what she wanted. No. The smallest out of the Konoha Anbu said, looking at Neko. Let me go in alone, Captain. Ah, there it was. The emotion he was looking for from the auburn-haired woman, incredulous. This doesn't call for the four of us. He turned his masked face towards May. I should be more than enough. Any more would be overkill. While Terumi was shocked into silence, Neko was mulling it over in her head. Nezumi usually never outright asked for a solo assignment, he was just given them because he was the only person strong enough to take them on. So why was he doing so now? That's when she realized what he was thinking. The resistance didn't trust them, and worse, they thought they weren't capable. That little genius. He had worded it as a suggestion, giving her the authority to make the decision. He knew she was worried that he would try and take over, and to squash those thoughts, he showed she had seniority in front of the others. He also knew that the only way for the resistance to realize just how valuable the team was, they needed to be shown that they were more than capable of fighting the good fight. If the youngest of the group could take down an entire prison filled with enemy combatants, not only would the cell be shown respect, but he'd be showing them Konoha's might. It did everything that both they and Konoha needed all in one go. It still astounded her how the boy was able to think and strategize to win the game with only one move. He truly was the monster he claimed to be. It just took her a while to fully understand what that meant. Permission granted. Neko nodded her head, both in confirmation and thanks. She was sure he could feel her gratitude. Do as you see fit to complete the mission. Nezumi got the message. I agree, and thank you. Yes, Captain. Wait a minute here. May finally spoke up. You're really going to just send the one kid? She couldn't believe the boy was as strong as they were implying him to be, she just couldn't. She knew that Konoha was the greatest of the five, and that they produced child prodigies in bulk, but this was just ridiculous. What the hell did they feed their children in that village? Yes, Nezumi is very special, and more than capable of accomplishing the required task. Neko replied. Don't be so quick to underestimate the ninja of our village. It's fell mightier shinobi than you. Nezumi wished he could laugh, that was a good one. And it was the truth, which made it even better. May was silent for a moment, her narrowed eyes on the blonde boy. Then she relented. Fine, but if he gets my people killed it's on your heads. Nezumi cocked his head to the right. His suspicions were correct, she was beautiful at every angle. Sarutobi Hiruzen sat at his desk in his office, once again stuck doing paperwork. It really became overwhelming at times if he didn't take much needed breaks. Speaking of much needed breaks, Jiraiya-kun, it's good to see you again. He said to seemingly no one. That's when the aforementioned Sanin seemed to melt out of the wall, his camouflage technique deactivating. Damn, sensei, you're almost as good as the Gaki. Student spoke to teacher, his ever-present smug smirk on his face. You can't fool me yet, Jiraiya, I taught you everything you know after all. The Sandame made a pouting face. Besides senjutsu. The Sennin roared with laughter. That expression you made doesn't belong on the face of the Hokage, old man. Hiruzen mock glared at his pupil. Careful, Jiraiya-kun, you're getting pretty old yourself. The sage's laughter immediately stopped. Great, was he really a geezer now? Whatever. Jiraiya mumbled. Where's the Gaki? I've got some time before I need to head back out. The white-headed man leaned against the Hokage's desk. Thought I'd get a little training in with him before I leave. Hiruzen shook his head. Naruto-kun is out on a mission, he won't be back for some time. He informed his former student. Jiraiya sighed. Another one? He asked. Do you ever give the kid a break? It was true. Naruto was always out in the field, probably more so than he was in Konoha. His mission count was off the charts, and he hadn't failed a single one yet. He'd been virtually everywhere the elemental nations had to offer, and that was a year ago. His success rate was 100%, something no other before him had accomplished. Jiraiya didn't know if he should be proud or nervous that Minato's son was already able to whip his in a spar. Naruto was a true prodigy, a genius among geniuses. He had surpassed many of the world's most powerful men and women by now, and he was only 10, nearing his 11th birthday. He shared the Sandame's worries of what the young Uzumaki would become in the near future. Hopefully he would stay the same, a loyal Konoha patriot. He enjoys what he does, Jiraiya. The Sandame said, rubbing his temples with his thumbs. He gets restless if he doesn't serve. He finished. I guess, the toad sage mumbled. So, what are you having him do this time? He asked, curious of what the blonde was up to. The tales that he would hear from the Jinchuriki were the stuff you'd tell your children at night. Knights saving princesses, heroes slaying terrible beasts, and, his personal favorite, when the boy got the girl. That was a toned-down version, of course. You couldn't tell your child someone their age was killing and slaughtering his enemies in mass, or how that same child was performing things that could make even grown men sick. And he never really got the girl, he'd just sometimes receive a thankful peck on the cheek or forehead. But Jiraiya digressed. I sent him to Mizu no Kuni. Hiruzen replied. I'm having him deal with the little problem over there. And by little problem, you mean the civil war, don't you? Jiraiya asked. So nothing too different then, save a country and kill off a repressive tyrant that's gone mad with power. His deadpan was barely concealed. That sounds just peachy. Hiruzen nodded. Indeed. I'm glad you understand. Jiraiya sighed. He really missed his godson. Nezumi now understood why the prison was called Black Harbor. The walls that encased the prison were made of some sort of black material that could withstand several high-ranking ninjutsu, or so Mei would have him believe. Yagura made sure that his prisoners of war had no hope of escape. Take away a person's hope and they might as well be dead. Walking husks of the people they used to be was not a life worth living. The black material was the reason why the prison was so hard to break into. And this so-called impossible feat was what Nezumi was tasked with completing. He first needed to break down the almost unbreakable walls, storm the prison, free the prisoners, and then find and escort this Ao-san back to the base. It was either that or sneak in and do everything covertly, but Nezumi decided to send a message to the Mizukage. We're coming for you. Signed, your friendly Konoha 10-year-old. Taking a moment to pull in the natural energy around him, the change of his eyes from blue to gold marked his entering sage mode. At first, Ero Sennin was astounded that he could enter the enhanced state so quickly, it only took him 10 seconds now. Jiraiya had explained what it was like for him to draw in the world's power. For him, it was like he had to open a door, and then actively pull the chakra in. Nezumi then explained that it felt somewhat similar for him. It was like he had to open the door, but instead of having to consciously pull the energy in, it would instead feel like the natural energy rushed through the door, excited to be reunited with him again. He inspected the structure for a moment, and then decided to just hit it with one of his more powerful techniques and hope for the best. He was almost positive the walls would fall. Nothing should be able to withstand his sage dust techniques. Raising both of his hands into the air, he began to shape natural energy into a tangible form. He was sure that the prison guards knew he was there now if the high-pitched alarms that started going off were anything to go by. It mattered not, he was going to complete his mission. The energy took the shape of a giant golden-shaped warrior that formed around the blonde. He didn't know it at the time, but he was in a way recreating a very rare and powerful Uchiha technique. However, instead of invoking the fabled Susanoo, he called forth something much more befitting a person of his mindset. Bishaman, Nezumi whispered, his voice only heard by the wind. Come forth, so that I may bring about justice to those who would deny the laws of our freedom. With those words said, the spectral, molten gold warrior fully materialized, his full body armor and famed spear present, depicting a much more savage and terrifying visage of the god of war and justice. The spear was held in its left hand. Nezumi needed his right for what he was about to do. Bishaman was topped off with a fiery gold halo, which oddly enough only appeared every other time he summoned the guardian. It briefly passed through his head that he was waking up now. Naruto was who he was at this moment, so he took his mask off, even though both Inu Taicho and Hokage Gigi kept telling him to stop that bad habit, and gave the world a smile in greeting. Uzumaki Naruto, the monster, was awake. He let his arms fall to his sides, he didn't need them anymore. Bishaman did what his mind commanded. He took another second to take in a deep breath, basking in the salt-smelling air. Then, he released his might upon Black Harbor. Senpo. Kami no Migi Te, Sage Art, the right hand of God. He shouted, and within the span of 5 seconds, he rushed the prison walls, let loose the devastating technique, and the black barrier came crumbling down like it was a house of cards. The image of Bishaman smashing his right fist into anything brought a happy smile to Naruto's face, which in this case didn't matter, because he was already smiling at the world. He could hear the terrifying screams of disbelief within his target, and they only excited him more. Dropping the golden warrior, Naruto became incredibly faster, nothing but a yellow and gray blur to the men and women that made up the prison detail. His kunai met many throats in one go, and he was happy that there was so much more left. He unsheathed his tanto, intent on cutting down the 3 men who were preparing a sweetened technique. Before they could reach the last hand seal, he was at their backs, the thin blade piercing flesh. With a single slash, all 3 men fell, gone from this world. While in sage mode, his awareness was heightened to such a degree he practically had eyes in the back of his head. This awareness was to thank when he dove to his right, an absolutely enormous fireball smashing down on his previous location soon after. He took a look at the woman who had tried to turn him into ash and smiled. So she wanted to play with fire, did she? He sheathed the tanto he wore on his back, and held his hands in the tiger sign. He was going to fight fire with fire then. Kaden. Goryuka no Jutsu, fire release, great dragon fire technique. He bellowed, and brought forth a giant dragon-headed fireball that raced at the woman with intent to kill. Her screams were all the confirmation he needed. He repeated the fury with his kunai, ending the lives of 10 more guards, their crimson blood staining his bare face with its warm feeling. He didn't quite like the feeling so much as it was just a reminder that he was doing what he was born to do. He stopped, already done with the set of seals required for the technique he had in mind for the 7 shinobi blocking his path into the prison itself. Futon. Daitapa wind release, great breakthrough. This particular jutsu was only AC rank, but with the amount of chakra that Naruto pumped through it, it could easily be an A rank. As proven when the 7 shinobi stupid enough to block his entrance were cut down with the hurricane force winds that were forced upon them. He was now inside the bleak prison, time to find the control room. 4 minutes and several well-timed Rasengan later, he really needed to thank Jiraiya-sensei for teaching him the Lord Fourth's personal jutsu again. It was one of his favorites now, and he made it to the room he could free the prisoners from. He was disappointed. The enemy was far from satisfying. Ao was spending his time like all the other prisoners at Black Harbor did, miserably. The staff didn't allow them any pleasantries, they had to sit in their cells and rot. The ex-hunter Nin was surprised that they remembered to feed them. That in and of itself was a small miracle with the amount of attention they paid them. He had been stuck in this hellhole called a prison for far too long. He hated himself now for volunteering for this stupid mission. He was just terrified when Mei-sama would mishear him and threaten to take his life. That had been why he volunteered. He had commented on how young the shinobi of Kiri were looking nowadays, and how he remembered back in his day, when he was young and not so old looking, that you'd rarely see someone so young make it into the ranks of the village. That, somehow, translated into him calling the powerful Kunoichi old, and therefore unable to make a man fall in love with her age-riddled body. Ao had no idea where she got that from his little side remark, but the woman had promptly threatened to kill him, and that's how he ended up stuck in here, on his own accord no less. The things he did for his country. That's why, when he heard the alarm bells going off, he had shouted for joy, which was not befitting of a strong man at all. He was just so tired of the nothingness that made up his days for the last 2 months. At least he got the information he came in here for, so that made it, at the very least, worth it. That thrice-damned Yagura was an evil genius. He had constructed a weapons factory underneath the village of Shio, which resided on the farthest of the southern islands. It was going to be a pain in the backside for the resistance to get to, it being so deep in Yagura's territory and all. They'd need the backing of several powerful shinobi, which they possessed, but the casualties would almost make it not worth the trouble. Unless they somehow convinced another village to assist them, Ao was thinking that the weapons factory would remain untouched for a good while now. Not long after the alarm was raised did his cell door open. The resistance did an excellent job with this one. He thought Mei-sama would send 3, maybe 4, teams to extract him, but the speed at which he was released from his cell would make him believe she'd sent 6 or 7. Did he really mean that much to her? His delusions were severed when he heard the young male voice call his name. Ao-san. The blue, moosed-up-haired man turned to where he could hear the voice. I'm looking for an Ao-san. Does anyone know where Ao of the resistance is? Why was there a child calling his name? You there, boy, Ao called out, wanting to know what was going on. Where were the teams that broke him out? I am Ao of the Resistance, what is it that you need? He emitted an annoyed feeling. Why was there a boy looking for him? Ah, so you're Ao-san. Good. Mei-san has sent me here to retrieve you. He sighed. But I guess we don't have very far to go though. Ao raised an eyebrow. Why would Mei-sama? He put extra emphasis on the proper way to address the powerful woman, send a child, to Black Harbor of all places, with the retrieval team. He asked, confusion lacing his words. The boy scratched the back of his head. I am the retrieval team. He laughed somewhat sheepishly. It's just me. Ao was silent for a long moment, an owlish look on his face. Did he just hear that correctly? Did this young blonde boy just claim to do what he thought 7 teams had done? Was he claiming to have broken into Black Harbor, taken out all of the guards, and then set him, along with everyone else being held captive, free by his lonesome? He was so shocked that he missed the boy's slightly chuckle. He didn't know it yet, but Naruto could feel how astonished and disbelieving the Kiri-nin was. Come, your commander is closer than she should be. It was Naruto's time to be annoyed. Did the woman truly underestimate Konoha? They were the strongest military force in the elemental nations for a reason. Ao nodded dumbly and followed the boy he just realized was a Konoha Anbu of all things. Was the leaf really so far ahead of Kiri that their children outstripped experienced Jonin? When the boy identified as Nezumi left with the guide who was to escort him to Black Harbor, Mei had followed shortly after. She had taken a small team with her too, so when the boy realized that he wasn't as strong as he thought he was, she could step in and do what needed to be done. What she had witnessed truly opened her eyes to how outclassed they were compared to Konoha. The blonde had first whispered something that no one present could hear, and that's when that thing showed up. She wasn't a very religious person, but even she knew of the god of war and justice, and when she saw the child, if he could still even be called one, not only summon him, but command him, she had been terrified. One strike from the golden god collapsed the unbreakable walls, and that's when the boy began his massacre. The first batch of shinobi that he encountered was run through like butter with a simple kunai. He had no trouble at all, it seemed, with nothing more than that. Then he had used the tanto strapped to his back to cut down 3 guards so quickly even she couldn't make it out. When she saw the giant fireball crashing down on him from his blind spot, she had thought it was over. That's when the boy dove out of the way. Apparently, he didn't have such a thing as a blind spot. The dragon-like head he spit at the woman responsible for the flames that almost toasted him was all it took to end her life. Mei couldn't believe that a child was so good at killing. And the smile on his face while he did these things unnerved her. He then went back to a simple kunai to the throat method, taking out at least 10 more enemies. After he was blocked by what looked like to be 7 shinobi, he unleashed an absolutely ridiculous amount of force in the form of a futon jutsu. When he had entered the prison, all she could hear were the screams of the men and women that made up the prison guard and small explosions. She saw all of the prisoners, some she recognized, some she did not, fleeing the carcass-covered grounds of the confines. Shortly after, the blonde, alongside Ao, made their way right for her. She wasn't surprised he knew, she wouldn't doubt the boy ever again. Team RO had earned her absolute respect. Before the two could make it to her and the few shinobi she took with her, the boy stopped and turned, telling Ao something she couldn't hear. When her general nodded a bit confusedly, she didn't know what to expect next. Ao made it to her and saw her confused expression. He said he didn't like the prison. Ao whispered. So he's going to raise it to the ground, he finished, somewhat hesitant of his own words. At that moment, the whisker-faced boy, which she now found to be both adorable and frightening at the same time, brought his arms into the air once again. The gold substance that his last attack was made of formed again, and with a shout of, Tenmei, heaven's decree. Black Harbor was flattened out of existence by a huge beam of golden light from the sky. Terumi Mei had just witnessed the most terrifying thing in her still young life. She had seen a child of Konoha, no older than 10 she guessed, completely decimate an enemy stronghold by himself. She'd remember that day for the rest of her life. That day, she had witnessed it. The might of Konoha. When Mei returned to where Neko and her team were on standby, the young blonde that accompanied her was now Nezumi. He'd had his fun. It was time to put the mask back on and act like he wasn't a monster. Neko smirked under her porcelain mask. The way the leader of the resistance kept glancing at her Kahai told her all she needed to know. The woman had witnessed, with her own two eyes, the power Konoha had at its beck and call. Good. Now they'd pay attention to what her and her team said. Ah, the benefits of knowing a monster. I take it Nezumi was more than efficient in proving that you have been given 4 operatives who are more than capable of fighting the Mizukage's forces. Neko said somewhat smugly. Having Mei actually say that her Kahais were only worth half an agent really bothered her, and to see how the woman reacted to Nezumi's actions made her feel more than a little smug. Nezumi knew as much, even without his abilities to feel others. Her tone said it all. Ah, the benefits of being a monster. Indeed, Mei finally said reluctantly. I'll make sure not to underestimate you or your team again. She bit out. You have my word. The woman actually looked to be in pain, sorry. There. She said it, now it was time to move on and forget it. She would be hard-pressed to admit that she was wrong and apologize to a Konoha nin again. She loathed having to do it a first time. Apology accepted, Mei-san. Karasu replied with a respectable nod of his head. You didn't know if you could put your faith in us. Wow, this was the most the auburn-haired woman had heard the black-haired boy speak the whole time he'd been with the resistance. Now you know you can. Mei nodded slowly. Having children talking to you like they were adults would take some getting used to, if she could ever get used to it. Really, what was that village feeding its youth? Did your general get the information he was tasked with recovering? Neko asked, wanting to know if Nezumi had been used for nothing or not. For the purple-haired woman, breaking people out who were already defeated and imprisoned wasn't the best way to spend their time. She hadn't planned to spend too horribly long in this war-torn country. She had a special someone waiting for her at home after all. Yes. A blue-haired man finally spoke up. The factory is underneath Shio. Ao revealed. That bastard stuck it somewhere impossible for us to get to without losing too many of our own. Mei's fist hit the earth-made wall. Damn it. She all but snarled. He really doesn't want to lose that damn place. She ran a hand through her long hair and sighed. We really needed to hit that base. It's our greatest way to cripple his armies. Neko thought it was a smart idea. Taking out the man's weapons factory would slowly make his men's supply dwindle down, causing more of them to lose battles with the resistance, not having the equipment to properly fight back. More deaths would lessen morale, which would then cause even more deaths. It was slow and subtle, but it was a smart move. The smallest of bug bites could fall a giant, and Team RO knew it. Nezumi was practically the epitome of that very saying. Very small. And very deadly. Very. Saru looked at Neko, a silent request to speak. He was given it in the form of a nod. Mei-san, if I may, I have a proposal you should consider. Nezumi smirked. Saru might not be very lazy, or constantly spam the word troublesome, like the rest of his clan, but the pineapple-shaped hair was a dead giveaway. The man was a Nara, through and through. And no other clan in the world could claim to be more tactically and strategically proficient than the deer-herding clan of Konoha. Nezumi turned his gaze to Mei and smirked under his mask when he felt her nervousness. Mei-san, he began, Saru is our team's greatest strategist. You should take whatever he says serious. He felt Saru's gratitude at the kind words. It could help liberate your country. Mei nodded, not wanting to argue with the boy's words. She had underestimated the small cell from Konoha once already, and that had proven to be a bad idea. What is it you wish to suggest? She asked him genuinely. She wanted her home out from underneath Yagura's cruel reign more than anything. If she had to play nice with the leaf, then she would. Her ego meant little if her people continued to stain the shores red. Mizu was more than ready to leave